Welcome to Law Subscribed. This is your dedicated news source for all things subscriptions and the law. My name is Matthew Kurbis. I'm the subscription attorney, and I believe subscriptions can help bridge the access to justice gap and incentivize attorneys to modernize and scale their practice like never before. In this episode, I interview Stephanie Everett. Stephanie is the CEO of Lawyerist and co-author of the small firm Roadmap Revisited. Stephanie has been a longtime opponent of the billable hour model, which is why I was happy to have her on the show. I'm also glad to introduce you all to Lawyerist, since they help law firms with the business side of running a healthy law firm. Lawyerist has a podcast on Legal Talk Network, so talking with Stephanie is continuing my trend of interviewing seasoned podcast hosts. Thank you to my sponsors, 650 and Gavel, links to both in the show notes, and more on them later. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only, and nothing said is legal, ethical, or financial advice. Without further delay, here's the episode. Stephanie Everett, it's my pleasure to have you on the podcast Law Subscribed. Thank you for being here, and go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners.
Hey everybody, I'm Stephanie, and I lead the team over at Lawyerist, which just recently joined with Affinity. I know we're going to talk about that. And I coach lawyers on how to run a healthy business.
So what you're telling me is that lawyers don't have healthy business? If this is news to anyone that's listening, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, we thought really hard about what we wanted to say. What kind of businesses are we helping people build? And healthy was just the word that we kept coming back to, because I think to be honest, maybe some of my competitors who are also coaching and helping lawyers are really focused on running the most, not even most profitable, right? Like they're focused on revenues. Like, hey, work with us and we're going to grow your revenues as much as possible. And we think that healthy profits is a good part of having a healthy business, but there's more to it than that. It takes a healthy team and strategy and, by the way, like systems and efficiencies, and you yourself as the owner need to be healthy. So this word healthy just kept coming up for us because it best described the entire picture of what we were trying to create.
Yeah, I actually really love that because I've had mostly women attorneys who are innovating in the like how their model is for delivering legal services. And, it's come down to also healthy lifestyles, right? If you want to be a productive parent, and also still be a practicing attorney, if you want to have good mental health, which is better for your clients and still be a good attorney, right? And sort of, I'm not trying to hide the ball here. The billable hour isn't really a great way to do that, right?
No, it's terrible. It's probably the opposite. Like I always say that I think it sucked a little bit of my soul away with every 0.2 I captured on my timesheet. And to be fair, like I work with a lot of women, and it's certainly, but men too. I have a lawyer who's a photographer, and he wants to have time to go shoot on the weekends or in the middle of the day. Really, I've got a dad lawyer who is now spending half his summer in Italy with his family, where his wife's family's from, and running his firm from Italy. So I think this idea of what is healthy and what is balanced shows up for all of us. At least it should.
Yeah. And as an aside, I also will be an occasional weekend wedding officiant. So I'm going to have to meet this other lawyer photographer. Then we could have like a lawyer photographer wedding officiant duo. Yeah. And so before we dive super deep into that, you mentioned, you were billing at your time. So maybe talk about that, what led you into Lawyerist, and give us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah. So I am a lawyer. I came out, went to big law because I thought that's what you were supposed to do if you got good grades and could take that path. And really thought, honestly, I thought I'd probably retire at that firm. I was probably very naive and had no idea where my career was going to go. Got an opportunity to start my own firm with a partner. We started that, the two of us. We brought my legal assistant with us. And in just under 7 years, we had grown it to a team of 20. So that was fun. And I was the managing partner. And I really discovered how much I loved running the business. My father had been a small business owner, and I think we traded business books for fun. So when everybody else was reading, I don't know, fun books, I was reading all the business books and just soaking it all up. So it shouldn't shock anyone then that when I started talking to my colleagues, people were coming to me and saying, how did you do this? How did you build this firm? How did you figure these things out? And I would start talking about budgets or financial strategy, and they
Fun
would look,
stuff, you know?
yeah. And they would look at me and say, I don't know. I don't have a budget. I don't have those things. And I was like, really? So I was like, I think there's something here where I could help lawyers do this. And so that sort of shifted me into this world where I got certified as a coach and I started working with lawyers first on my own. Then I got lucky enough to start the incubator for the state of Georgia. It was a collaboration between the state bar, the 5 law schools in Georgia, and the Georgia Supreme Court. So I designed this incubator program where we were helping newer lawyers start socially conscious law firms.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really how I met Lawyerist. I went to one of their TBD conferences and met Sam and Aaron. And then Sam and I spoke at a conference together. And I was just trying to be a guest on his podcast. Honestly, I had orchestrated this whole dinner so that I could try to see if he would have me on the show. And he was like, you should come work with us. And I was like, I don't even know what does that mean? And 3 weeks later, there we were. I flew up to Minnesota and we had dinner or we had lunch and we said, yeah, let's do this. And that was 5 years ago this week.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, congratulations on the anniversary. And such an interesting time now that it's the next step of your journey 5 years later with the merger. You know, sort of skipping over a lot here with Lawyerist, but we're gonna get into, we're here for the subscription model, but let's talk about this merger. I did hear on the Lawyerist podcast that are you the one switching from Google Workspace to 365, or is it the reverse? Because I feel so sorry for you if you're switching from Google.
Yeah, we're leaving Google today.
Oh no.
It's a thing. It's fine. It's okay.
Yeah, I hear a lot of great things about Microsoft 365 these days. So I think Teams and integrations and Power Automate, I think there's a lot of cool stuff that could be done there.
Well, here's the good news. So we just merged our team with Affinity Consulting Group, and they help law firms like build and implement their technology. Like they actually go and do more of the hands-on work. And so the good news is they actually teach courses on how to use Office 365 effectively and what all the little bells and whistles are so that it looks and feels a lot more like maybe a Google World, would. So we're in pretty good hands because they're teaching us all the little tricks.
Yeah, SharePoint, not as user-friendly as Google Docs, but once you figure it out, it is pretty much the same thing. Just turn that little autosave slider on all your Word docs up at the top left corner and Excel and all that. And it's almost like you're in a Google Workspace.
There you go. Good tip.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, and let's talk a little bit about that because, something that I'm really glad, to have you on here. I've had some other lawyer coaches who do different things, how to build a book of business, that kind of thing. And so, because I'm a practicing attorney and I have this podcast because I think we need to improve the profession. So if somebody is listening to this podcast, a lawyer, and they're like, well, I need to implement my technology, I know it's your first day or your first week with Affinity, but what does that look like, prospectively, going forward if a lawyer wanted to reach out? What does that partnership look like with the Lawyerist Affinity merger?
Yeah, I mean, so that they have been doing that for years, lots of years. In fact, when I had my law firm, they implemented my technology. I was a client, which is just kind of fun, full circle. So they help you set up if you want to automate they use Hot Docs, and I know they use other programs, but that's just the one that's coming to my mind right now. So they can help you set up your automations. They can help you set up your practice management, import in all your data, map it all, net documents. They are the experts to setting all those things up. And they've traditionally done that, I think, in a very customized way. So it's, in a traditional, this actually feeds right into probably what we're about to talk about, right? So, and they very much have that model where you call them and they say, let me scope this project, let me figure out what it's going to be, and we'll probably build it out on an hourly basis. For those who are familiar with Lawyerist, what we do is a lot of our coaching programs are all on a subscription basis. So I would say we're more of a done with you if they're done for you, right? They do it for you, we do it with you. So what does that mean? It means that we charge less per month, but we're not in there getting our hands dirty necessarily because we don't have the resources or the ability to do that. But maybe we're providing guides and step-by-step guides and videos and support and group coaching calls. And I mean, we do a lot. We do a little bit with tech implementation with Zach on our team, and he helps people figure out their tech, but we've never been in there building it. Instead, we've focused on all the, we're focusing on all the parts of your business. So sorry, but that was a long way of saying we see a lot of opportunities to bring these things together and say, okay, how can we take some of Affinity's knowledge and expertise and use what we know and how we build our and price our services, and where do those two things come together? And that's where the exciting future is. So I don't know which product's going to come out first or how we're going to do it, but together I feel like these teams are unstoppable, and we're going to be putting out some really cool stuff in the next years, right?
Yeah.
We're just getting started. It's week 1. I'm still learning how to use my office first.
when you put it like that, though, I do see like such incredible potential synergy between the two companies. So the merger makes a lot of sense. And on an entrepreneurial lawyer's journey, I think it all starts for Lawyerist with that book that you have in the background, which is the Small Firm Roadmap, right? And I wish that I had come to that book sooner in my professional journey as a lawyer. But by the time I got my hands on a copy and read it, I was like, oh, like I've been so steeped in this world of innovation in the legal profession for so long, I kind of know all these things. But it was nice to read it and be reassured that all of my lessons through podcasts and CLEs and going to what used to be in-person conferences like Tech Show, that all this knowledge that I've gained is more or less accurate about like the way to run a business as an attorney. And I will say that even though I kind of already had all the knowledge in there, finally getting my hands on that book was one of the things that helped me decide, okay, I'm going to leave a firm. I'm going to go start my own firm in the way that I want to do it. Because it's hard to build a practice when they're practice. I left my last firm on good terms, but I really wanted to do it my own way, the way I think it needed to be done. So if any lawyer listening, I have to imagine we have a lot of overlapping audience, with that being my audience is much smaller than Lawyerists. But if you're listening to my podcast, you're probably listening to Lawyers. But if you're not, you got to pick up the Small Firm Roadmap and listen to their podcast. Links in the show notes. So let's say somebody's read that book and they're like, okay, I have to now work with Lawyerist. Like, what are sort of some of the next steps of what that would look like, and in what ways do you incorporate lessons like from your incubator, past about it doesn't just have to be the billable hour.
Right. Yeah. And if you haven't gotten the book yet, good news, we actually are revising it. We have another edition coming out in everybody's hands by Tech Show of 2023. So stay tuned for that.
Great.
Hitting the shelves soon. So here's the good news. So what we do is we take all the concepts in that book of how do you build, what does it look like? What does a healthy business look like? And then we help people really implement it. So there's a lot of resources also on our website that are free that will help you with this. But I think a lot of it does start with, what is it that we're selling, and how do people want to purchase that from us, and how do they value what we offer? And so really the billable model still sort of sits at the heart of that issue. And so I think it's a good segue to say, okay, is there a different way we can sell or think about what it is we're selling? Because the bottom line is, nobody wants to buy your time. They're hiring you to solve a problem, always. And there's a value they've put on what it's worth for them to get that problem solved. And that's what you need to be thinking about.
Interesting. I do want to challenge that a little bit, in that I think that there's also opportunity to sell problem avoidance, right?
Oh,
so it's
sure.
so it's not just I think that just like the billable hour, so well entrenched in the legal profession is, let's wait until society and people have problems and then they come to the lawyers to solve them. What about the opportunity of, and how do you sell problem avoidance, which is a lot harder to sell when you're not actually facing a problem, right?
So yeah, and I think and I just read Ron Baker's latest book, and so I'll give him credit for this phrase, him and Paul Dunn. He says what we're really selling are relationships. And I think that's where we're headed with the subscription model, if you think about it, because, and that kind of goes to your point, is yes, we traditionally think of ourselves as the problem solvers, but we also know the counselor, the attorney and counselor at law part, if we can put on our counselor hats and we can be in the room when the decisions are happening and be able to say, hey, that decision may take us down this path, or maybe we think over here. I mean, how many times would we like to be in that room? Now, why aren't we in that room? Because nobody wants to pay our hourly rate for us to sit in an all-day strategy meeting where we might pipe up, even though that advice could have been the $100,000 saving, saving us from litigation advice, but we're not thought of in that role. In fact, most of the time we try to get our attorneys off the phone as soon as possible. And because this merger is now public, I can say we had to hire a law firm to obviously represent us in this merger. It was terrible. It's so terrible. And I mean, every time I was like, what are they charging us for today? And it was, like, what nonsense. Like, I'm a lawyer. Everybody in this deal was basically lawyers. And all we did was badmouth the lawyers the whole time because they just couldn't even. I mean, here's my silly example. They couldn't even approach us. It was an internet company, basically buying an internet company.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted us to do due diligence over whether we had polluted the environment. Because that's a checkbox they have somewhere that says we must decide this. And we're like, we're not paying you for this, people. Think about this.
Yeah,
Anyway.
yeah. Although that is so interesting because it's like, okay, so you're using some servers somewhere through Google or Amazon or something, and like, are they polluting the environment? Because
Wow.
it's all SaaS, like it's all, you have your tech stack, and that's your potential pollution, maybe.
If they had framed the argument that way, maybe I would have thought it was okay for me to for them to charge me that 0.4, but that's not what they were thinking.
Well, lawyers who think differently think about that stuff, right?
Yes.
Think about things that way. Lawyers who are more well entrenched in the billable hour, are not. And it's complicated, right? Because I represent a larger client for me, and I'm one of many law firms that they hire. And I'm a solo. I handle more day-to-day vanilla contract stuff for them and some less complicated employment things. But they're still hiring, your big giant law firms at the very expensive billable hour because there's value to the brand name too there, right? Depending on the type of deal, the type of transaction. So like they're going to be the last ones to abandon, the billable hour because they have the cachet with the name, right? But that's also another thing that I've heard lawyers talk about too is, names of law firms or like your personal brand versus like a law firm brand and the differences there. Maybe you want to touch on that because that's also, I think, an important aspect of if you're creating a law firm that's using the subscription model, that's creating recurring revenue, that's a really good business to sell. But if your law firm is Stephanie Everett, PLLC, that's a little bit harder to sell, right? So like what has Lawyerist been talking about in terms of trade names for law firms, that kind of thing?
Well, I think, the new book, The Small Firm Roadmap Revisited, actually goes into quite a bit of detail on this because I think one of the overarching themes in that book is that your business is an appreciable asset. Law firms traditionally, we haven't really thought about that. We haven't put that hat on or that, framework to say, what is this business that I'm building and what am I going to do with it? So many lawyers think they're just going to have to shut off the lights and walk out the door. And that's not the way other businesses think. Everyone else is like, what's my exit strategy and what are my potentials? So I think it's important that we start thinking of our businesses that way too. And by the way, we've been selling law firms forever. I think regulation changes are coming, but I also don't think that's necessary. I mean, when you have a new associate buy in and become a partner, you've just done a transaction. So one of the things I say in the new book is, making partner is not a promotion, it's a business transaction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a big mindset shift we need to start making with our law firms. And so when we do that, when we put that lens on, we start realizing that maybe things like trade names do matter. And there's a benefit to building a brand that isn't associated with your last name. So I'm all for it.
Yeah. And you could always still have a personal brand, and you should, right? But having a firm that's, like you said, an appreciable asset, which I like that terminology, you're going to need some kind of trade name. And thank you, Law HQ, because I'm pretty sure they're the ones who sued every every jurisdiction to allow us to have trade names as law firms in every jurisdiction in the U.S. Uh, so um, so let's talk about just sort of why. Let's get more into the nitty gritty of why the billable hour is just awful. I mean, we've sort of touched on it here and there, but like why it's awful. How have you seen his lawyers works with a lot of attorneys and a lot of law firms. So like what have you seen the negative implications been for lawyers, and then for lawyers who have then adopted alternative fee arrangements, whether it's flat fee, whether it's subscription, something else, how that's benefited them in some way?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason people like the billable hour is it puts all the risk on the client and none on us. It's easy. It is an easier way to bill. I have to do no thought except maybe just decide what my hourly rate's going to be, right? And then I keep track of my time, and then there's my invoice. And anything else is going to require thought and strategy and potential risk. I may get it wrong. That's what everybody's worried about. So I think we need to first just acknowledge that and say, yeah, it is harder, but if you can shift, I think it's better. One of the biggest things for me that would sell it, other than, from anything else, is the idea that I could potentially work less and make more.
And
right?
if I may add, serve more clients at the same time.
Absolutely. Yes.
When I went solo, I pivoted from mostly litigation to a transactional only practice. I did not have a database of documents to automate. That's why a business and employment legal document database and automation tool like 650 is super useful. I can rely on the quality of the documents in 650's database since they're putting excellent legal minds to work curating and updating their documents and automations over time. When you're not billing by the hour, outsourcing and efficiency matters, and 650 can help you scale your practice to get high-quality documents drafted in less time. Use the code LAWSubscribed at 650.com and when being onboarded to get 10% off. If you're not a business and employment attorney, or you have your own documents that you'd prefer to use, then my next sponsor, Gavel, is the automation tool for you. Gavel allows you to build shareable, client-facing workflow and document automations. In other words, Gavel helps you create a legal practice where attorneys can monetize the value they bring clients in productized form at scale via subscriptions and flat fees. Use the code LAWSubscribed at gavel.io to get 10% off an annual subscription. There's no one right way to automate and scale your practice, but with one or both of my sponsors, 650 and Gavel, you can take your subscription law firm to the next level. Links to both in the show notes. Now back to the show.
So I remember billing, 256 hours in a month. I think that was my record because that number sticks out in my mind. And, there's no taking off early on a Friday and enjoying the weekend because you got your work done, because now you've just cut into your revenue potential, right? You have to make up that time on a Sunday or the next week. You got to stay extra a couple of hours. And so when we bill by the hour, we're also limiting our revenue potential because the only way to make more money is to bill more hours or raise our rates.
And the only way to do that is also hire more attorneys. And there's a labor crunch in everywhere and in the legal profession, right? And so, this sort of brings into the conversation productizing legal services, right? You've got Hello Divorce, you've got a lot of other sort of up and comers in different spaces for productizing different types of services. You've got standardization of contracts with one NDA and bond terms, right? So you've got all these different things coming into productize, which should, in theory, make it easier for you to make more money to scale like what you're talking about, but that doesn't comport with the billable hour. So like in what ways are you seeing productization of legal services helping lawyers achieve this kind of result that you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, just like Aaron at Hello Divorce is doing, our good friend and Labster, Aaron Thomas, started prenups.com and completely changed his business model. He had a traditional family law practice where he was doing contested family law cases. He had a whole staff, a whole team, and it was very traditional. And he woke up one day and called me as his business coach and was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I was like, great, let's change it. So it took us a little bit of time, but now he doesn't have that big staff. He has prenups.com. Everything's online. He's got virtual help. It's all automated. It's amazing. the other thing that he's able to do is he's able to price his services and get the value. So it's a little bit of a mindset shift, right? Maybe he only spends 1 hour on a prenup at now. I don't know what his exact time is, but the key is that he's charging for the value he created in building this massive templated document that he now has, because he has a really robust document that has all the bells and whistles. And what that also allows him to do is focus on what matters. The time he spends with the client, he gets to really counsel them. He's sort of changing his whole practice of saying prenups isn't a recipe for divorce. It's how you have a healthy marriage, because you actually have a financial plan for your marriage. So now he's counseling and teaching couples who are engaged how to approach their finances in their marriage. So it also flips the switch on how he thinks of himself as a lawyer. He's no longer in the divorce business. He's in the I help you not get divorced business, which is a fun shift, right?
Yes, that is what I'm talking about too, is the problem avoidance, right? Like, because that's really where this productized alternative fee arrangement thing as a lawyer thrives, is let's help people avoid their problems. But the prenup space is incredible. Hello Prenup, I know, is another one, and I've had a huge amount of prenup business as a relatively new solo. I'm in like month 9 or 10 at the time of recording, and so many people, it's just a great market opportunity. So many people are the children of divorce because their parents had a 50% divorce rate, and now they want to avoid that. And so it's actually just an incredible market opportunity. So I'm glad to hear that somebody in lab is doing that. And to tie it back into what you were saying even a little bit earlier, is this is how our profession competes with other professions. Because if we don't get rid of the billable hour, we have to work 5 days a week. We have to work 6-7 days a week, 80-hour weeks. Meanwhile, other industries are adopting 4-day work weeks. Well, how are we going to compete with that as a profession if we're still billing our time? I just don't see it happening. If you look in your crystal ball, like, do you see, are we going to be able to do this as a profession? Are we going to be able to come together and eliminate the billable hours so we could just compete as an industry?
Of course. I mean, I'm the eternal optimist, and this is what I'm teaching people to do. So I think yes, because it's already happening, and people who get it are excited to do it. It just takes it is hard because you have to take a step back and look at things differently. And we are a precedent based profession, right? Like, we are taught to look at what was done before and start there. And I think that's what we do when we open our own law firm is, I mean, kudos to you because you didn't do that. But most people say, oh, I'm going to go out on my own. And then they say, well, look at this firm I just came from. I'm just going to do exactly what they did. I'll just do it over here under a different name and with some different people. That's not enough. Like, we have to take this opportunity to say, no, I'm going to rethink everything. And honestly, I think the pandemic in a weird way pushed us further to that place than we realized, because I mean, we've been promoting remote work for a long time now. And the idea that you could be remote, I've been remote for over 5 years, and everyone thought we were crazy. And now people are like, oh, okay, we can work from home. It's not that bad, or we can work from anywhere. So now a big movement in lab right now is I've got lawyers who are like, I want to work from Spain for a month, or Amsterdam, or I don't know. Everyone's going on all these places, but they're not necessarily leaving behind their firms and their businesses to do that. They're able to run their business from that other location, which is really fun and exciting, I think. So yes, we'll get there. We may be slow. It may be painful, but it's going to happen.
It's going to have to, as will, adoption of AI in our practice, right? Like with ChatGPT is blowing up right now if you're in the right circles, and like how to use that the right way, for your practice. Not necessarily ChatGPT, but future iterations. Because if we can't compete, if we are losing people to 4-day work weeks in other industries, that's going to be another solution to the labor crunch problem too, right? Is adoption of technology, AI. I know it's still very new. Well, AI has been around, and there are other providers within the legal tech space. But like, what's sort of your prognosis on AI in the legal profession?
It's going to have a place. And again, these aren't things that we need to be scared of. I think these are tools that we need to take advantage of. We need to understand what the potential is. And we need to know that our lawyer brain is never going to go away. If anything, for now, at least in our lifetime. Maybe I don't know if future generations, but for the foreseeable future, these are the tools that are going to allow me to not think about the mundane, boring stuff that I hate doing anyway, and to do the really fun stuff. And so I think if you have that mindset going in, don't be scared of it, but how can you embrace it and have fun with it and use it? And by the way, another component for why the billable hour, you don't get the advantage if you're using AI and now you can speed up your time.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be billing on the billable hour anymore because you're not getting the value of the product that you're delivering to the client, because it's not about time. We're going to do work faster. Work is going to come easier. So we got to get away from, we'll just count up how long a time it took us. We got to get more. And that's where it's hard. Like, cause people are like, well, what is that worth? How do I charge things now?
That's an important question. That's a question we're trying to answer on the Law Subscribe podcast, right? We're trying to figure out, what is it worth? We've had subscription attorneys have been around for almost a decade now, right? I mean, it started in the trademark space because obviously brand protection is without question an ongoing service that needs to be provided to clients, right? I'm trying to do it in the general practice transactional space with an access to justice tilt on $20 a month accessibility to everyday people who couldn't afford it before. And I've seen that in some family law spaces from some innovative attorneys in Colorado. So I think, access to justice is also a part of that too, right? Which is also market opportunity.
Yes.
But the problem is the educational gap too of, why do I need to hire a lawyer, right? Like you brought up templates before too. And so like going back to that, something that I found is when I'm dealing with clients who have hired lawyers before, even once, even like a freelancer who hired a lawyer to do a template for them once, they think it's going to be really expensive. So I'm going to get this template and I'm going to try to adapt it without fully appreciating that laws change, context changes, and that changes what should be and shouldn't be in a contract. But when they're afraid to go to their lawyer because they're going to be charged by the hour, then they need a template because that's at least better than nothing, right?
Yeah.
The no legal advice. But when you change that relationship to whether it's a flat fee or a low subscription with a subscription flat fee hybrid pricing model, which is really my pricing model, then maybe they have a template, they put it together with their client, but then while they're negotiating it, they could come back to their lawyer because they're already paying them X amount a month to do exactly that based on the nature of their business. I wish I could niche down, but I don't know where the most market need is in my state for that type of thing. So I'm very broad right now, individuals, freelancers, small businesses, but there's a huge opportunity, I think, for even niching down in like, I'm a subscription attorney for freelancers. With the gig economy blowing up right now, I think there's huge opportunity for something like that. And I haven't seen anyone really trying to tackle it from a legal perspective.
Yeah,
What are your thoughts on something like that from the access to justice angle?
for sure. It's a big part of what we think about and do, because it's such a huge problem, and it's not going to just get solved in one way, right? Like it's we need to tackle it. But here's something that everybody could do and probably should do, which is, we're all members, or most of us probably, if you have a mandatory bar association, you're probably a member of some bar association. We need to get active and demand that our bar associations and the American Bar Association starts being that publicity voice for us to educate the public on these things and these issues. Like, we need our own Got Milk or the Other White Meat campaign for law that needs to go viral like immediately, because I think there's a lot of small firms, especially, who are thinking this way and know this to be the case and are really doing creative things to solve these problems.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have that. We need help. And this is where our bar associations should be helping us. Stop fighting, protectionist rules, and get out there and help us build a brand that lawyers matter and clients need us, and we actually can help them avoid problems and solve problems in a cost-effective, creative way.
Oh, preach, preach. As a current leader in the Young Lawyers Division of the ABA, I find that I try to speak up about exactly that, and just, nobody hears me. Preach, keep going. I'm gonna clip this and just send it to every ABA leader who I work with. Yeah, and there is such a focus on like pro bono, and that's even true of local bar associations. And we need pro bono. Like, that's never going to go away. But how we think about pro bono is different when you change the accessibility and affordability of legal services. And like you said, I think law firms can make more money when you scale.
Yes. And here's the other good news. You get to decide how you scope your services. So there's a two-part parts to this, right? It's pricing, but it's also scoping.
Mm-hmm.
And this then gives clients options and choices. And you get to think about, so not everybody needs the Cadillac of services. Like right now, if I go and hire you to do my, I don't know, let's not use divorce because my husband wouldn't like that example. But my, whatever it is,
estate plan. Let's just say estate plan.
Yeah. And say you don't bill on a flat fee like a lot of them do.
Right.
You get to just, you're in control. So you decide what services I need, how I need them, when I need them. You own the whole process. And I just have to say, I trust you to say, okay, and I'm going to pay you my retainer and I'm going to get bills at the end of the month and you're going to surprise me. And I have no idea what I'm signing up for in most cases. Well, there's an opportunity to say, like anything else I shop for, what do? I look at the features and I say, do I want this? Do I want that? Am I willing to pay more for this thing? And sometimes I am. Like I got to buy a new car because my lease is up and I'm going to get the winter package for the heated seats, even though I live in Georgia and probably don't need a winter package, but that's how I get my heated seats. And that's a necessity in my world now. And I will gladly pay extra for it. And I know I'm paying extra for it. Why can't I have those kinds of options when I go to get legal help? And you could say to me, hey, here's our basic model. And at this price, you get these things. And at this price, you get these extra things. And at this price, and I've got lawyers, I got one lawyer in lab, and he's doing this with his subscription model for business clients. And he says, like, so I think this is interesting because it really challenges what our clients want from us and what they're willing to pay for. You always get callbacks, right? Like if you're on his one level plan, you get a link to schedule a time to ask your questions and you might have availability in the next 2 to 3 days. But if you're on his premium plan, he opens up an hour every day and you have guaranteed access to him every day, same day access. But you pay a premium for that, which is what we would probably expect. Like I don't expect to, I don't know, call most people and, unless I get that, like right now we're planning a trip to Disney over the break for my daughter. And my husband and I were like actually debating, should we get this like crazy VIP service where they walk you to the front of each gate? And we decided, no, that's probably silly. But we thought about it because we were thinking about our time and our money. And would we be willing to spend extra for that escort that walks you around? And apparently you don't even have the fast pass thing. You just shoot right up on and get on the ride.
Yeah. I mean, I absolutely love everything you're throwing out right now, Stephanie. I think that, and I think we need like some technology that helps lawyers package that and sell it, right? And obviously, Lawyerist plus Affinity now might be able to help you do that. But even to just like you're still going to be cobbling a lot of things together. I really only know of like 2 software out there that are selling to lawyers saying we can help you have a subscription practice, and that's Fidoo and Rally. And even then, I've looked at those tools and I don't quite think they do what you just said needs to be done, right? So like, how do we, and I do those, but it's all just kind of manual things. I wish I could automate it, but it's all pretty manual now because the tools just really aren't there. So we also need innovation in the technology side, or we need outside of the legal profession technology that does that, because we see it with other SaaS products. We see those options with other technology, features. So maybe law firms need to be more like technology companies, right?
For sure. By the way, the billable hour doesn't allow you to charge for those premium things that you're doing for your clients. So if a client comes in and says, I need this as a rush, I need this motion filed tomorrow, maybe if the smart firm is saying, okay, but that's going to be a hourly rate plus fee for us. But for the most part, you're not capturing the value of that heightened service that you're offering your clients when you charge by the billable hour. Everyone gets the same price no matter what. And so that's another reason to stop thinking about the billable hour this way, because it limits what you can do and how you do it.
Yes. So you've mentioned Lab several times. So maybe talk a little bit about Lab. Talk a little bit about how if the conventions and if somebody listening is like, well, I have to sign up for that. How do they do that?
Yeah. So obviously it's a subscription because why? I couldn't be sitting here doing this if it wasn't. But I mean, I was thinking about this earlier when you asked me this one question on how to price things. Like, it might be priced too low. Some of my newer coaches are like, really? We don't charge enough. And I'm like, yeah, but we make plenty of money. And I'm not, I want to help more people. So
Hmm.
that's the beauty of where I get to sit is I can price something. I know my competitors are charging more. I'm going to charge less because I can and because I want to help more people, even if and bring my price down. So it's a 6-month commitment. You basically get a whole bunch of online resources. We've got workshops and tools and templates and all the guides to help you get started on every part of your business. So everything down to templated hiring, job postings and interview questions to this new financial model that I just built that honestly is easily worth $5,000 just for that because this thing is sweet. Everyone's really loving it. So you get a ton of online resources. Obviously, we have group calls every week where you can come in, talk to coaches, talk to experts, help figure out, talk to other community members that are struggling with similar things and get the support that way. And then you get one-on-one coaching. So you meet with a coach usually every other week to work on your plan. I mean, obviously we start with your strategy and then we help you implement it. That's the whole key. There's no magic secrets in lab that you're going to learn. You don't need to pay me a bunch of money and I'm going to tell you a secret that nobody else knows. The information is out there. Lab is about where you come to test it, implement it, pull levers, and figure out how can you actually make changes in your business. And we do that for $849 a month. Pretty good, right? I think.
All right, so link to sign up or apply for that because it's an application, right? You don't just get not you guys don't just let
Yeah.
anyone in.
I mean, it's an application because I've had people call me who say, Stephanie, I know the legal profession's changing and I want to be the last one to change. And we like, that guy is not going to be a good fit for us and we're not going to be a good fit for him. So don't be freaked out by the application. I have some people who like send these emails like, please accept me. And I'm like, look, we just want to have a conversation with you, honestly, for your benefit. Like, are you aligned with some of the things we're going to be teaching? And are we the right people to help you? And so it's more of a application just for both sides to make sure we're sort of aligned and it's seems like a good fit.
It's almost something that I think lawyers should maybe do with their clients when their clients are signing up, right? Got to make sure it's a good fit, not just take anything that walks through the door, right?
Absolutely.
Before I ask you the last question I ask all my guests, is there anything else, any other nuggets of wisdom that you want to share about why we need to eliminate the billable hour?
I mean, just do it, people. I mean, there's so much out there. I mean, we could probably talk about this for days, but you know what? Just experiment. Take one thing that you do, think about a different way you could price it, and just test, experiment. You don't have to go full in, just dip your toe in the water and test it with a few clients and see how it goes.
Yeah, love it. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much. My last question for you here is a hot dog a sandwich and why?
Oh my gosh, your team, you would love to be on our team. We have a lot of debates about what tacos are. Um, I guess yes, because it's bread and meat and isn't, I don't know. I've never thought about the definition of a sandwich, so I'm just going to say yes.
Okay, all right, you got it. Well, if people wanted to reach out to you specifically and get in touch with you, where's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, Stephanie at lawyerist.com is my email and will be. So you can always get a hold of me there. Go to our website if you haven't, lawyerist.com. You can find a ton of information about all the things, not just how to run your business, but also all the different tech products that are out there. You can read our reviews and see what's out there, what features are out there, and just learn a lot about what's happening in the industry.
All right, great links to all that in the show notes. Stephanie, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks again to 650 and Gavel for sponsoring this show. The best way for others to discover this show is for you to share it with someone you think would find value from it. Follow me on LinkedIn since that's where I'm most active on social media, and click the bell towards the top right of my profile to get notified about all of my posts about this podcast and everything else I think is valuable for you to see. To get in touch, message me on LinkedIn or email kurbis@lawsubscribed.com. All links are in the show notes. Until next time, this is Matthew Kurbis with Law Subscribed.